It is National Public Safety Telecommuters Week, or another way of saying it is it's 911 Dispatchers or Dispatchers Week, our telecommunicators. And this is a group that really doesn't get much recognition, unfortunately. And as we're going into this week, I wanted to, it reminded me of a little story I wanted to share with you. But first of all, I want to thank all of our 911 operators, our dispatchers. It's a job that I have done and never really want to do again. For the rest of you, though, I want you to think about it for a moment. We now live in a society that has 911 across the entire country, and that started just down the road in Haleyville. Used to be you had to remember what the emergency number was for police, for fire, for EMS, if you had an ambulance service. And nowadays we just have to remember 411. And we had other services that had easy to remember numbers. It wasn't until the late 60s that we decided to come up with 911 as an easy to remember number to access emergency services. So if you need any of this stuff, you just call 911 and they show up. And we can press a button on our phone and hold it. You can even hold it on your watch, and some watches will call 911 automatically even if you don't press the button. If it detects a fall or detects you're in an accident or something, 911 is called automatically. And I don't know if we think, well, I know we don't think about it enough, but that's just a huge comfort to us as a nation, that we can dial 911 or press a button on a phone and 911 is called, and then help will arrive. And using GPS on smartphones and things nowadays, they can find us pretty much anywhere that we are. Once we dial 911, they don't track us all the time, but when we dial 911, that activates it. And that's a pretty amazing thing. So the story, and my hat's off to dispatchers. So I had gone through the EMD training, emergency medical dispatcher training, so I could be a dispatcher. I just thought it was something I should have on my resume as a paramedic. And I would fill in occasionally for short periods here and there, but I didn't work too many true shifts as a dispatcher. It might be that the dispatcher needed to take a break and I would cover, but I was signed up working as a dispatcher. And I've never been one for talking on phones much, just not something I enjoy doing, but something I can do. So I took my shift, and my shift was a Christmas Eve. I figured Christmas Eve, nothing happens. It's always a quiet time for us. My dispatcher wanted Christmas Eve off to spend with their family so they could enjoy some time with the kids and kind of do the Christmas Eve Santa thing. So after church, left service, went straight to dispatch. I was all dressed up in my church clothes, and walked into the ambulance service and went back to the dispatch center. And this ambulance service had only one dispatcher for the ambulance service, and we had 5 or 6 ambulances. And it was a Christmas Eve, and I asked the dispatcher how things are going, and all Christmas Eve day they had very few calls, like 3 or 4 calls. So at about 6:15, I sit down, put the headphones on to go do my dispatch thing. Dispatcher walks out, wish him a Merry Christmas, and the phone rings. 911, what's the emergency of your or what's the address of your of your emergency, what's the location of your emergency, and took down that one, dispatched an ambulance. Before I could even hang that one up, the second phone rang, picked that up, another emergency, dispatched second ambulance. Before I could lay that one down, third phone rang, picked it up. So I had like 2 phones going all the time, trying to provide some information. And that's one of the things dispatchers can do for us, is if you're not sure how to handle the emergency until the professionals arrive, dispatchers will give you pre-arrival instructions so they can walk you through or talk you through an emergency, how to handle it until help gets there. It's a pretty amazing thing. You just have to make sure you stay calm enough to listen to them. And be able to answer their questions. And I want you to understand they're asking a bunch of questions because they need to relay that information to me as a paramedic, so I can provide better care and be ready when I get there. But that doesn't mean that help is not on the way. They have dispatched the ambulance, the police, the fire, whatever. They're on their way, but they're going to try and get more information so we can give it to the responders. So I was trying to juggle 2 or 3 phones at a time. And I forget exactly how many calls. I think it was somewhere near 40 calls we ran in the 6 hours that I worked as a dispatcher. The dispatcher I relieved came back in at midnight. I do know that of all of my ambulances, From 6:15 when I started to about 12:15 when I left that night, 6 hours later, not a single one of my ambulances saw their station again. They would leave the hospital and immediately be dispatched on another call. And I don't know what EMS dispatcher god I made mad, but I had apparently really made them mad. And we were just swamped for those 6 hours. No idea, I'd never seen anything like that, especially on a Christmas Eve. So that was my first and my last real shift as a dispatcher. They wouldn't let me work on the truck or work in dispatch again. They always put me on the truck. And to be honest, I feel much more comfortable on the ambulance. Being on the phone and knowing someone's hurting, having an emergency, and I can't be there to help, all I can do is ask questions and talk to them and try and comfort them, is just not my skill. I'm much better when I can actually see the person, talk to the person, touch the person, and fix things. But there are some amazing people that work as dispatchers, and they save lives every day. And I know they don't get the recognition. People don't understand the training they have to go through, the training they have to maintain. It was a week, I think, of training that I went through initially, and you're thinking a week just to answer the phone call, but there's a whole lot more to it than that. And they have to maintain that certification, so they have to do continuing education pretty frequently. I think every 2 years, might be every 3, but have to renew their certifications. So there is a lot that goes into being a dispatcher. They suffer many of the same sort of traumas that we do, of having to talk to people that are potentially dying and trying to comfort them in that moment. And it's just a real special person to be a dispatcher. So happy Telecommunicators Week, Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. That's a lot to say. Happy Dispatch Week. I love my dispatchers. Hope you guys are getting some recognition this week, and I hope you enjoyed this story.